This entire military is one cohesive, dedicated force. And the threats to our nations, they don't sleep. They're watching our every move. Iran, Russia, China, North Korea, ISIS, Al-Qaeda. They may be watching this right now. Our military should not be mistaken for a cable news gabfest show. We don't care what you look like. We don't care who you voted for, who you worship, what you worship, who you love. It doesn't matter if your dad left you millions when he died or if you knew who your father was. We have been honed into a machine of lethal moving parts that you would be wise to avoid if you know what's good for you. We will not be intimidated. We will not back down. We don't want war. But if you want war with the United States of America, there's one thing I can promise you, so help me God. Someone else will raise your sons and daughters.
Opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
All right, good evening. Welcome to the Farron Dozier Show on KCAA Radio, 106.5 FM, 1050 AM. Also streaming from the KCAA Radio.com website and All right, welcome to the Farron Dozier Show. This is Trench Talk episode today. I was trying to get this whole thing over here situated. I didn't want to play my intro today, so we'll just make sure that we get that covered later. Again, this is Trench Talk, Farron Dozier, right here on MBR platforms. That's right, Military Broadcast Radio Network. We appreciate you for allowing us to share our stories and share our experiences right here on their platform. You know, it is the 1st of January. I want to make sure I share that. Very important. Such a blessing today to see another year, 2025. So much to talk about. So much that I want to address. And so where do we start? You know, as 2024 was ending for myself, just reflecting like most of us do. Look at what we were doing the last few years, especially this past year. And I said what we're doing, right? But for me, I also look at who was I being last year? And the being was my experience of myself, right? Not the stuff that I was just doing in life, but my experience of myself in life. And that to me is just so important because sometimes we don't realize our character. Sometimes we don't realize our behavior, right? And so that's something for me that I've been paying attention to literally the last 14 years of the experiences that I've been through. And so we're going to come back and I'm going to talk to you about some of this very important discussions that I want to bring to you today on the Trench Talk segment. Yes, we talk about all types of conversations here. This is a variety type of show. So there are things that we talk about specifically around sickle cell trait and sports and mental toughness and things like that, community outreach. But then there are some things that, you know, I also care about that I want to address here as well. So again, I appreciate you for listening in today. And then we'll come right back and get into some of these conversations right here on Trench Talk. Shout out.
Introducing LT Defense Tactical Gear, your ultimate solution for top-notch protection and performance in the field. Our armor bundles provide unmatched safety and comfort, while our battle belts and holsters ensure quick and easy access to your gear. Stay prepared for any situation with our high-quality medical supplies, designed to keep you ready for action at all times. Looking to enhance your skills? Our firearms training programs will take your proficiency to the next level. Trust LT Defense for all your tactical gear needs and gear up for success on the battlefield.
Some of us still carry the burden of battle. It threatens to drown us in our everyday lives. In battle, we had our weapons and combat gear to keep us safe, to keep us confident. But when we returned home, we were not armed with weapons and gear to cope with our own minds. I was lucky to find my combat gear, my mental weapon, and it's called Calmago. Calmago is a drug-free device that allows you to achieve calm in less than 3 minutes, in moments of anxiety, stress, anger, panic, or insomnia, not with medication, but rather by activating the parasympathetic nervous system through breathing regulation and multisensory stimulation. A recent study has shown that Calmago decreases PTSD and anxiety levels in veterans, helping those who are suffering and having a long-lasting effect. Visit Calmago.com to learn how you can get Calmago through the VA or with a special veterans discount code.
All right, welcome back to the Farron Dozier Show on MBR platforms. Again, thank you so much for tuning in again today. Yes, we would, like to think that life is just such a, particular kind of way where it's just a lot of peace and comfort and niceness. And by it being the first of the year, I know people always kind of figure out, what's next for them in this coming year and just all these goals that we set, which is fine. But something today that I want to address, I want to talk about for me is kind of more important because, again, as I was reflecting about what I was doing last year in 2024, I also reflect back on not just what I was doing, but who I was being as a person. And I believe that focusing on our character sometimes is important. Focusing on our character, our behavior, on how we treat not just other people, but how we treat ourselves is so important, right? And so I'm going to play this video for you. I saw a couple of days ago, well, it was probably last week now, been about a week now, almost, that I saw this video clip of this young man sharing his life experience. And, being trained and developed as a listener, I can say that 14 years in this education that I'm in, definitely listen different than the average person. And just so listening to his conversation and what he shared about what he was going through and where he was at today, it made me think about how important our relationship is with ourselves, right? And I know this is not a normal conversation. We don't walk around and talk about how I think about myself or how I feel about myself. Usually we're always out pointing our emotions or feelings towards something outside of us. But yet then when we do deal with what we deal with inside, it's more of in the silence. It's like, I'm not going to say that out loud. Like, I'm not going to tell people I don't love myself today. I'm not going to tell people how I feel about myself, that I'm not worth it. Like, we don't say that stuff out loud. We say it to ourselves, but we don't say it out loud. And so I'm going to play this clip for you. And I just want you to listen to what he's saying. All right. And the disclosure is, this is not about politics. This is not a political conversation. Although he mentions in his context of what he was dealing with was related to politics, I want you to listen to this from his experience. So when I'm talking about his experiences, listening to the choice of words that he uses to describe his life, right? That's what I'm asking you to listen to. The political stuff about Trump and the left and the right, all that, you're going to hear all that. right? And some of you may be triggered by that, or you may have an opinion about that. But I'm not asking you to focus on the political conversation. I'm asking you to focus on this young man experience of himself and what that experience of himself brought him to look for in his life for what he thought was missing, what it seems to him was missing, right? And why this is important, as veterans, as military parts of this community, ask any veteran what we miss or what we miss the most in our military experience, and they will tell you it's camaraderie. That might be the first thing that you hear from a veteran when you ask them what they miss the most is the camaraderie, that brother, that sisterhood, the sense of belonging, the connectedness. Now, do we all get along with each other? No. But to know that you belong to this organization, that the people on your left and right will die with you or for you, it's a different experience. Kind of like the experience that we want from our own families. And so when I get done with this video, then we're going to break it down and we're going to talk about some of the things that he said. I'm going to show you how it relates to myself, but I'm asking you to listen to what he says and relate it to a version of yourself. I want you to look at it from your life experience, from yourself, and see where do you have a story like this that this young man shares, that he's sharing from? Do you have a story similar to that? What is that for you? Because I believe that this is going to be something that is going to help us as a nation heal. Not just as an individual. Yes, I got to start with me. But as a nation, I believe that we could heal from some of these conversations they're right here. They're right in front of us, right? But our attention span, the things that we say that matter to us, the superficial conversations that we have. Yeah, the reason why I'm even on this broadcast is because of things that I found about myself that I was looking for, right? And if you want more information about my story, if you want to, find out more about my background, you can go to farrond.com and pull that up, and you can do some look at some of the videos and stuff in my previous conversations over the last 14 years. Right, but I found radio due to the fact that I was literally depressed and suicide ideations and life was over. That's how I got to be in front of you. Not because I want to have a talk show or because I got something to say, No, it's really a platform that I get to express myself and the things that do matter to me. Right? Not completely ego driven. Is there some ego in there? Yeah, there's some ego in there. I'm not going to ease God out of everything that I talk about. That's what ego is for me. I'm not going to ease God out. So yeah, you have to have a level of self-love, a level of self-pride, a level of self-worth, and level of self-esteem. And you're going to hear it in this conversation. This young man talks about where his views were by describing his life experience. And so I'm asking you to listen to this and see if you can relate. That's all I'm asking. I'm doing Trench Talk this year from a relatedness, ultimately from a relatedness standpoint. It's not about right or wrong, good or bad. I agree, I disagree. I don't have those kind of talks. These talks are relatedness. I want you to be able to relate to one another. Relate to your mom and dad. Relate to your siblings. Relate to your cousins. Relate to your uncles. Relate to your neighbors. Relate to your friends. I don't even want you to understand me because I don't understand Farron completely. So why would I put all that on you to try to understand me when I don't understand me? I'm still peeling off layers of my life, trying to figure out how I got to be this person that I am in front of you. But the ability for us to have these kind of talks is where? You got to find it. You got to create it. I say, don't hate the media, become the media. It's one of my hashtags. So again, this talk is not political at all. This is about the experience of what it is to be a human being. So we're going to play this clip. Again, I want you to listen, not react, just listen to what he has to say from his experience. And then we'll get into more of this as I break it down for myself, of what I heard for myself. And maybe you can hear something for yourself by the time this episode is over. This is Farron Dozier, Trench Talk with Farron Dozier. That's me right here on the Military Broadcast Radio Network. Hey, make sure if you are wanting to download the app, that's right, you can listen to this from your device. Go to whatever platform you download your Android or Apple and get the app for MBR. We're also on Roku TV and all of the social media platforms. Wherever you download your episodes at as well, you can get those episodes there, whatever platform you choose. All right, so we're going to play this episode, come back, and then I'm going to be a little bit more relaxed and have a conversation with you of what I heard and why I believe this is such an important discussion, due to the fact that just the state of where we are today as a people, there's got to be something to interrupt, what's going on. Like I said, there's nothing about being right or wrong, good or bad. There's just something with us as being human beings that it's a missing conversation. And we say we listeners, we say we communicate well, we say we do these things, but do we really? All right. So this young man is going to share some of his life experiences. Again, it drew my attention because of not just what he was talking about, but what he was talking from. And that's something that I've begun to do as I became a speaker at church and studying the Word of God and applying that Word of God to my life. I've learned that I'm not going to talk about the Word. I'm going to talk from it. And by talking from it, I'm going to talk from it from my life, what God has given me to deliver. Right. So the body of Christ, there's all these different conversations that we're going to have. Right. And people have different messages to deliver. Right. Of what God has to say and what Jesus Christ said and the relationship with the Holy Spirit and that. Right. Those 3 in 1. And so each one of us has a voice, has something that God has given us to deliver. In my experience and in the activities of life. My activities of life is my sickle cell trait talk. That's my activity of life that God gave me. I was born with that gene in my mother's womb, passed down through the generations of my family to have a sickle cell trait talk, to experience those complications, to almost die from it, to become an advocate and now share information so maybe people can get more information that wasn't being shared years ago. The risk factors. That's my activity of life. But who is Farron when Farron shows up with no rank, with no broadcaster, no basketball team owner, just who is Farron as an experience? And this guy right here shares some of where those experiences come from in us and how we can deal with those and how they even show up in our life. All right, so let me go play this episode. Let me play a PSA real quick first, and then we'll come back and we'll get right into this conversation here. This is Trench Talk with Farron Dozier on MBR. Hey, what's up, man? How you doing?
I'm blessed, my brother. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Hey, did you see the game last night?
Oh, that was a good game.
But did you see the shot?
I lost money from that shot.
Oh,
too,
man, that shot was cold,
I
man.
hated it, but it was good. Damn. What's in those jeans?
You really want to know?
I do.
Exhaustion, muscle spasms, asthmatic issues, unexpected sickle cell trait crises.
Damn. Are you serious? When I was young, I found out I had sickle cell trait. My mom's told me, but I ain't have no knowledge of it. But when I got older, I had a child, and the doctor told me my daughter has sickle cell trait. Do you know the facts that both parents have sickle cell trait? There's a 50% chance the child may have the trait and 25% chance the child may have the disease.
Hey, that's what's the count. Do you know that 2.5 million people in the United States have sickle cell trait, 300 million people globally? I didn't find out I had sickle cell trait until I was in the Army, 10 years. Next thing you know, I had a sickle cell trait exertion site.
Sickle cell? I thought that was a black gene or something.
Nah, man, the Latin community is number 2. 1 out of 36,000 babies are being born with sickle cell disease. You could be Caucasian, Mediterranean, European. You gotta know your bloodline, man. There is an inherited gene in our community that has been forgotten. The name is sickle cell trait. WDCONSCT, also known as What's the Count, is out to bring awareness, education, and prevention to people all over the globe. Want more information? Call us now at 323-215-5384 or visit www.wdconsct.org. All right, good evening. Welcome to the Farron Dozier Show on KCAA Radio, 106.5 FM, 1050 AM. Also streaming from the KCAA Radio.com website and MBRRadio.us.
I was 14 when Donald Trump defeated Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election and became the 45th president of the United States. I grew up in a very conservative area, and me and all my friends, young teenage boys, were of course very conservative, and all we were excited about was making fun of the triggered people online who were crying hysterically and thought the world was ending. I love watching those Ben Shapiro owns the SJW Warriors compilation, and Charlie Kirk puts dumb college kid to shame, like those types of videos. You guys know what I'm talking about. Not coincidentally, this was a time when I was also bullied a lot. I was super insecure about myself, and I felt very hollow and empty inside a lot of the time. So to avoid being bullied by others, I found myself being increasingly intolerant and hateful towards other people so that I wouldn't get bullied, but those people would get bullied. And I feel like this really aligned with how my political beliefs were at the time. It was this zero-sum game where either me or them could escape this social shame, and I would subscribe to anything that provided me escape from said social shame. And as I got older, the only side of the political spectrum that seemed to accept me was the right, while the left was seemingly calling me racist, sexist, misogynist at every single turn. Keep in mind, I'm only like 16 years old at this point. I have no idea or understanding of who I am, the values that are most important to me. All that I know is that I feel a lot of anger and rage towards one side of the political aisle, and that another is accepting me or even embracing me for how I feel. From a very early age, I was sold on the idea that everyone on the left was a blue-haired, triggered liberal who hated all men, who started the KAM movement, and thought that all men were racist, evil, disgusting people. Meanwhile, people on the right were openly embracing and accepting me for the person that I was at that time. And it ingrained within me almost a victimhood complex, right? Where I thought that, historically other groups have been oppressed, but in today's day and age, in today's society, it is the white man who is oppressed. I was constantly bombarded by conservative messaging saying that things like D&I and feminism were going to steal my ability from succeeding in today's society. Now, I can recognize that when you're coming from a position of privilege, equality looks a lot like oppression. But at the time, I felt very fearful of these changes, and I worried about being accepted and successful in society. Also, sorry for the outfit change, I just got back from church. Now, the first time I realized that my worldview may be skewed or maybe wrong was senior year of high school. In my English class that year, we read a book about an African-American family dealing with the consequences of redlining and white flight. Now, I would definitely recommend you do your own research about redlining, but in short, in the 1950s and the 1960s, property owners refused en masse to sell homes in the suburbs on the basis of race to African Americans, who were then forced to remain in the cities. There was a huge demand and transfer of wealth to the suburbs, so the property values of those suburbs shot up exponentially, while those in the cities fell drastically. This meant that the property values for African Americans decreased solely on the basis of their race, while the property values for white people increased solely because of their race. Now, this is a clear, cold-cut indicator of systemic racism that impacts people and families to this day, and it was a real wake-up call for me. And this was the first time I realized that maybe I was wrong, and that the grievances that these communities have are actually rooted in fact and historical context. Maybe I've been misled and misinformed by the political pundits that I listen to. That was all but confirmed for me on January 6th. Instead of conceding with grace and honor like a real man, Donald Trump cried for 3 straight months after losing the 2020 election, citing baseless claims of fraud and rigging for why he lost, and blaming everyone but himself. He brought into question the sanctity of our democracy, our elections, and our institutions, and he effectively riled up his base in advance of January 6th. That same base committed violence and an insurrection on his behalf that day. And as I was watching that unfold on television, I thought to myself, wow, how can these people be doing this? How can they believe the things that are coming out of his mouth? And then I realized that up until a few months ago, I was the same way. I believed the exact same things that those people believed, and they were storming the Capitol. Now, the main takeaway I had from all of this is that Trump benefits from the rage and the anger and the spitefulness amongst young men. It helps him win elections. Conservative pundits like Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro make their livings and careers off the frustrations and grievances that young men feel. Elon Musk gets billions of dollars of government subsidies and tax cuts because young men are angry at women and immigrants and not billionaires. My point being, everyone on the right directly benefits from the disenfranchisement that young men feel. So why would they ever attempt to solve it? Why would they provide meaningful solutions for you and me when they make money and win elections capitalizing off your anger and frustration? They won't. They will only provide you with new enemies to channel your frustrations onto, but never the ones that are actually causing it, themselves. It's not a coincidence that the more young men follow people like Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Charlie Kirk, and Ben Shapiro, the more angry and frustrated they will become. Therefore, I think it's really important as men that we look inwards at the anger and frustrations that we feel, rather than projecting that onto others or looking for others to blame. Calm your mind, calm your heart, listen to those that you disagree with, and empathize with those you don't understand. It is not masculine to be embroiled with anger and rage. It is not masculine to bully the downtrodden or the oppressed. It is masculine to regulate your emotions. It is masculine to show empathy for others. Be a rock against the waves. Do not allow those who stand to profit off of your anger exploit you and only further those emotions. My hope for young men is that you pay close attention to the next 4 years under a Trump presidency. Focus on what material benefits a Trump presidency brings you. If you didn't get to see liberals cry or scream because Trump got elected, if you didn't get to see college students getting owned by Charlie Kirk on campuses across the country, or if you didn't espouse hateful things with the specific intent of upsetting others, what would your top political priorities be? His promises of lowering gas and grocery prices will not happen given his proposed economic platform. Trump will not lower the cost of housing, of healthcare, or your taxes. He's not working for you, he is profiting off of you. When your entire ideology is structured around making others sad and unhappy, you will not find peace within yourself or happiness in your own life. Escaping the pitfalls of the far right has made me a better man, more secure with myself, and happy with the world around me. If any of this resonates with you, know that you are not alone.
All right, welcome back to the special episode of Trench Talk with me, Farron Dozier. I hope you enjoyed that. That was 6 minutes, 6-minute talk by that young man there. And what I want, again, you may hear the political stuff in that conversation, I'm sure, because, you know, there's so many triggers in the world of conversations about Trump and politics, all that stuff, right? That's not what I'm pointing to. I'm not pointing to any of that. I'm pointing to his experience. Did you hear the young man experience? That's the context of this conversation for this broadcast, for this show. We're not talking about politics, because when you get done listening to me, you might realize that this isn't a political conversation, that this is about life and how our sense of belonging as human beings are so important that they're driven by our ideology, as he mentioned, your philosophy, your theology. There's so much going on in the world. And so I want to just point out a couple of things of what this young man said that I felt was so important for us to have this talk today. All right. So the first part of this conversation, in the context of the human experience, his age. Did you hear his age? He said he was 14 years old in 2016 when this whole Trump and campaign and all this politics stuff was happening. He was 14. Now, as a 14-year-old, he also mentions what he was dealing with in his life at 14, being bullied We're going to definitely talk about that. What was his experience of that? Insecure and hollow. That was his experience. Did you listen to what he said about what was going on at age 14 in 2016? He was being bullied. He felt insecure and hollow. Now, whatever your insecurities are for yourself, you got to figure that out. Whatever hollow means to you, you got to figure out what that means to you. My point is, 14 years old, being 14 years old, what does that look like at 14? Well, let me tell you what it looks like. It looks like by the time you're 12 years old or so, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, you're probably not talking to your parents as much. You probably are disconnected from your mom and dad if you have both parents, or you have an opinion about your mom or dad, whoever's not there in that house, whatever that is, whatever your dynamic was. By that age of 12 to 16, you're probably not talking to your mom and dad. Not because you don't want to, but because now there's a disconnection between you and your mom and between you and your dad. And that's what I'm pointing to for this first part of this conversation of being a 14-year-old. What was it being a 14-year-old like when you was growing up? 12 years old, that elementary to middle school transition. The work that we do, we talk about that specific transition of change, of identity. Because I'm not talking to my mom and dad no more, whether I felt like they abandoned me or whether I felt like my mom disappointed me or my dad disappointed me, whatever that alt is that you have, that you think about your mom and dad when they come to your mind about that negative context about them, what they didn't do for you. That's probably where that conversation was broken at. It's easy to look. So now we talk about that. So by 12 years old, elementary to middle school, the transition is you've got more teachers, more classes, more students, and now your identity is trying to figure out, who am I? Remember, because I'm disconnected from my home now, my parents aren't listening to me. Mom, you're not listening. Dad, you're not listening. We don't get into that topic too. That at 14 years old, his experience of himself is insecure and hollow. And he's looking for his identity to attach it to something outside of himself, outside of his parents, outside of his home. So what do? At that age, we turn to our peers for acceptance, for love, to embrace us, whatever that is for you. You ain't got to Google this. Use these conversations up against your own life and self-reflect. These are empirical truths. You ain't got to Google it. Look in your own life and see where were you at that transition into elementary to middle school. What was your identity attached to? That's number one. That was the first thing I heard him say. Because when I looked at my life, I was like, oh, shoot. When I was 12, 13, my identity was trapped in basketball. Because I had changed from different schools. We moved to another neighborhood, and I went from this one school to elementary to junior high school. And then from that junior high school, I went there 1 year. So then we moved. So I had to go to another junior high school because this school was closer to the house. And so now, how do I fit in? I'm 13, 12, 13. How do I fit in now at another new school? And it was basketball. I walked to school. I seen the kids playing the basketball courts in the morning before school. And I walked over there and I started shooting around. And that's where you would find Farron. Before school, recess, lunch, and after school. Now, I couldn't tell you that back then at 12 or 13. But today, after doing the work and applying those principles to my life and self-discovering and realizing where my identity started and came from, that was one of the key points, was that acceptance. to belong to my peers and embrace with my peers. Did I get bullied? Of course, we all got some level of bully. I got teased in the neighborhood. Of course, we all experience something by the time we get to these, school ages. My point is, he pointed out that he was insecure and hollow, and his identity was thwarted. His sense of belonging was now no longer in his peer age group anymore because his peers teased him. So to avoid being bullied, he found a political party that embraced him, that accepted him. So instead of now him being bullied, he starts to bully other people. Now we know that in the bullying world, that's pretty much what happens. That bully is dealing with something that is in his own life that he's trying to figure out. And so instead of, dealing with that being bullied, he bullies somebody else. So now his problems is pushed off to the side, and now he can focus on what's really going on and hide what's really he's dealing with, but projecting that upset and frustration on other people. That's the bullying context. So that means that guy who's the bully in school is really dealing with something in his own life and doesn't have the space to deal with it or have somebody to talk to and release it. So he releases it on other people. Another experience he said was he became intolerant and hateful. He said it became more of a me and against them. At least I'm not getting bullied no more. I'll just bully somebody else. So I'm next, and now I can put that off on somebody else. And he gave it a name called social shame. Shame is just, it's a stronghold in the Bible. Shame. It's one of the first strongholds in the Bible. When Adam and Eve, when they ate the fruit off the tree of knowledge, they were ashamed because they covered themselves with leaves and stuff, hid from God. Shame. How does your shame show up? It's not just from today. There's some past shames that we carry over as adults that we live from. And so when he said that, I was like, man, geez, he's saying everything that he's dealing with. And so he was accepted by the right in his experience. He felt accepted by that political party, by those people who were in that right wing. He felt embraced and accepted because he was being heard. And they related to him, or he related to them. But not out of I want to be a part of this because I want to be a part of it, but from an identity crisis. See, this is a difference. Now, you got to look in your life for that first piece and figure out where that came from you. The second part of this is now he's 16. His experience of himself at 16, he says it out of his own mouth, the lack of understanding of who he was and or his values of what he believed or what he followed at 16. I'm 54 trying to figure out what my values are still today or what I believe. Most of us are still trying to figure those out if we tell the truth, because we have so much opinions about stuff in life. We have so many fractures of emotional upsets and frustrations, disappointments and despairs, expectations, whatever that is for you. But he says at 16, the lack of understanding of who he was or his values, his experience of himself, of life, anger, and rage toward the other side. So that means now that he picked that side, so now his side is right and your side is wrong. I'm right and you're wrong. Based off opinions, based off of beliefs, based off of my ideology, based off of my philosophy, based off of my theology, I'm right and you're wrong. But that's an opinion. There are some things in life that they're the right or wrong, yes. But when it comes to your views and your opinions about other people, see, I'm talking about up against people. We cannot have opinions about other people. That's where the issues come from. But more so because I have an opinion about myself first. See, my opinions about myself pretty much are probably going to be negative. They're not going to be always happy. They're not going to be always accepting. There's going to be some negative contexts that I don't like about myself. But I don't say that out loud. I don't say it when I look in the mirror. I say it to myself when those things show up and how upset I am about myself. Like, man, how did you do that again, Farron? Man, you messed up again. Why did you make that decision again? Like, you got to see that for yourself. So that's at 16. 16. 2 years difference. He's still in that, from that bullying phase at 14 to now he's found this party and now he's trying to figure out and realizing all of a sudden that, hey, I don't even understand what I was dealing with myself. I don't even know what my values were. But all I knew was I was accepted. Now that could be, this is political talks. Now let's put a pin there. That's politics. Let's talk about the military. Let's talk about sports. Let's talk about clubs. Let's talk about gangs. It's the same conversation. Sometimes children choose gangs because they feel like they belong or they're accepted by that gang. Regardless of their values, regardless of their understanding of themselves, even minus the consequences of what it is to be in a gang, that you could go to jail if you do something wrong. Like, we don't even look at the unforeseen consequences. But sports is no different. Some of us find our identity in sports. I just told you mine was in basketball. I didn't have no dream to become no NBA player. It was how I stayed connected to my friends. I was related. I was embraced. I was connected. But yet I still walked home. I still had things that I was dealing with in my heart. But at least in those moments on the basketball court, I felt like I was a part of something. A pickup game was enough. And then that 16-year-old. This is why I'm having this talk with you today. Because we were all children. We were all teenagers. We were all in elementary school. What is that for you? And that's the part that we got to start to look at as we self-examine ourselves, as we become self-aware of our behavior. Not what you do in life, your character, your behavior, your beliefs. Part 3. He was accepted and embraced. So I said, what's the difference? What's the difference between being embraced? Because those are his experience of being accepted and the experience of being embraced. So embrace is welcoming. He felt embraced. He felt like he was welcomed in that political party. He also felt accepted. Accepted is acknowledging without expressing strong positive feelings about it. Being accepted. Acknowledging without expressing strong positive feelings about it. He just felt accepted. And he felt embraced. Welcoming. Even though it was some corrupted conversations and some corrupted things that created that conversation, that attracted him to that. That's the power of belonging. That's the power of the sense of belonging, to be accepted, to be liked, to want to be a part of something. And he talked about who he was at the time. He also said he experienced victimhood He had a victimhood complex, and it felt like it was ingrained in him. He felt like that victimhood was ingrained in him. He also, his experience was fear, his fear of not being successful. He also expressed his fear of not being included. He also experienced fear of change. These are things, again, he's 16. Adults, we're dealing with this. That we want to be included. We want to be a part of it. We want to experience being included. So we talk from exclusion is an emotional fracture. But inclusion is an emotional fracture. See, some people feel like they're included by their race, or they're included because of their political party, or they're included by whatever that is. I'm included because I'm a basketball player. Like, I'm included. But it's coming from a fracture. It's an emotional wound still. So it's not just because you're excluded emotionally, but you can be included emotionally and still have a fracture. It's an emotional transition. I don't have this, but some people in my black community feel like they're excluded because they're black. And then there's a whole world conversation that you could point to. Some people feel like that other people are included by their race. And there's a whole conversation that goes along with that in the world. This is not right or wrong or good or bad. This is just what life looks like right now. So being excluded and being included can be emotional. See, the activity of being included and excluded is the activity of it. Oh, well, I can't get this job because I'm black. So that's because the activity of it. The activity of exclusion and emotion is what the world points to about diversity and inclusion and all these other things. Get this job because it's allocated for blacks or Hispanics or Asians, because now they're opening up these doors for us, for you to feel like you're included as an activity. But if I don't feel included by my own emotional state of mind, I'm not going to walk through your door. I'm not going to take your program. I'm not going to go be a part of that because I don't feel like I'm included, or I feel like I'm excluded. Even if you give me opportunities, I still may not go through there because I don't feel like it. I'm included. The feeling, the emotional state of that. It's not the activity of exclusion or inclusion. It's the emotional state of it. And these are the conversations that we have to start to have if we want to start to restore our nation, if we want to start to restore our communities, if you want to start to restore your home, if you want to restore yourself first. His experience. Before I take this PSA break, I'm going to do one more. He also discovered a relatedness. Now, as he shares his experience of what he was dealing with and what he saw for himself and trying to figure out such a young age and being part of the right side and all this other stuff, there was a point in school where he was able to study something and learn about something that when he took a step back, he could relate to that population. About blacks being redlined. There's a whole conversation about that in the world, about blacks being redlined and not being able to buy property in certain areas and all this income, and you can't live over here. Like, that's a real conversation. And we got evidence of that. But he read that and he could relate to it because he put himself in that situation. Then he looked at his own life experience and was like, wait a minute. If that's what that looks like for them, what does this look like for me? And so he saw himself in another community. He pointed out the facts and the historical context. Yes, there are facts. But guess what? Facts can change. Facts can change. Because there are truths. There are empirical truths. There are divine truths. Some of it is emotional, and some of it is the activity of life outside. Like there are some divine truths outside. There are some things that are factual, but then there are some things that are divine. And they're truths. They're not facts. They're truths. So facts can change. The historical context, that's a whole conversation by itself in the world right now. We are talking about history. History this, history that, history this, history that. We don't even know what the true history is. But you can either focus on what history says, or you can focus on today and figure out it's your turn to make history for your life, for your family. So I can reference the past and live from the past and be upset about it or excited about it, the history. But how does that play out in my own life today? And so one has to determine that for themselves. One has to figure that out for themselves. And sometimes your opinion about that is not the other person's agreement opinion. So then we argue about history. We argue about the facts. But what is your test for reality? What is that? What do you utilize your ideology, your philosophy, your theology to test for reality up against some old facts or some old traditions that don't work no more? Or because this organization documented that this is the fact and now we live from that's not the only fact. We're human beings. Our brains develop. They grow. We can learn more. We've moved. We've grown so much as a species. And yes, it might be a fact, but it might not be the truth today. And it might not be the divine truth about a conversation. But if my opinion is in the way because I'm trying to belong or I have an opinion, then it's all that stuff gets in the way. So I like the fact that he was able to, in school, still in school now, read some information and was able to relate to that information and then look at his own life and be like, wait a minute. He was like, wait a minute. If that's what they were dealing with as a community, as a people, then what am I dealing with as a person? And there it started to unfold. This is Trench Talk. I'm Farron Dozier, retired Army Sergeant First Class. Man, the relatedness. That's what we're talking about. Not the political piece, the relatedness.
Some of us still carry the burden of battle. It threatens to drown us in our everyday lives. In battle, we had our weapons and combat gear to keep us safe, to keep us confident. But when we returned home, we were not armed with weapons and gear to cope with our own minds. I was lucky to find my combat gear, my mental weapon, and it's called Calmago. Calmago is a drug-free device that allows you to achieve calm in less than 3 minutes. In moments of anxiety, stress, anger, panic, or insomnia, not with medication, but rather by activating the parasympathetic nervous system through breathing regulation and multisensory stimulation. A recent study has shown that Calmago decreases PTSD and anxiety levels in veterans, helping those who are suffering and having a long-lasting effect. Visit Calmago.com to learn how you can get Calmago through the VA or with a special veterans discount code.
Zetovia salve, made from natural and organic ingredients, good for inflammation, poor circulation, hemorrhoids, yeast infection, lip sores, dry coughs, eye pain, minor cuts and bruises, and ready to purchase at botanicaherbalco.com. 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 Do you remember studying sickle cell in biology class? What's the Count on Sickle Cell Trait Prevention is here to bring you awareness, education, and prevention conversations around the risk factors of this inherited gene. Visit wdconsct.org. Tune in to the Farron Dozier Show on KCA Radio 106.5 FM, 1050 AM. Also streaming from the KCARadio.com website on Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Pacific Time. Brought to you by Sports Collective TV, Sports Collective Radio, and Sports Collective Media. We got the Heme Factor, we got In the Zone, and we got Fourth Down in the 20-second timeout sports segment. All for you right here on the Farron Dozier Show on KCA Radio 106.5 FM, 1050 AM. Also streaming from the KCARadio.com website with my guest hosts Robert Lamar and Coach Will. Catch us on Sports Collective Media on Instagram and Facebook. And make sure you watch us Sunday nights at 8 p.m. on KCA Radio 106.5 FM, 1050 AM. Also streaming from the KCARadio.com website. Music, talk, sports, and so much more on the Farron Dozier Show.
I just wanna breathe his name, my God. Lift his name up high, dedicate this life, give him all we got. Testify with our hands held high, keep him up in the sky.
I just wanna praise. I just wanna praise. I just wanna praise. I just wanna praise. I made it up out of the city, avoided the hate and the gritty. Me and my little brother, my lovely mother tried to make it easy, but we was some knuckles though. We used to let them knuckles throw. We used to let them chuckles go when we thought about the places we would go. Yeah, lights off. Yeah, no really. Lights off. Yeah, no money. Lights off. Under the candlelight.
Yeah, that's right. You can catch me on KCAA Radio 106.5 FM, 1050 AM, and at KCARadio.com Sunday nights at 8 p.m. That's the Farron Dozier Show over there, AM FM radio. More of a sports and highlights, and still some life talks over there too. It's a variety show over there too as well. Also on Lit Live. Yeah, it used to be Dash Radio. Now it's called Lit Live. You can catch me on GH3 God's House of Hip Hop. That's my Christian hip hop talk show. Shouts out to J Love and Lillian, we started that together, and now Jay, they took a break. So myself and One Way TK is over there doing the interviews and playing some of the hottest Christian hip hop music. Yes, the Christian hip hop music is not whack anymore. There's some really good Christian music, hip hop music today. So you can catch us over there interviewing Christian artists, sharing their stories about their background, what brought them to Christ, things like that, and play their music as well. All right, so again, we're talking about this young man who, again, for me, it was his experience of his life spoke to me more than the political talks. So I'm not addressing the politics. I'm sharing this conversation from a relatedness conversation so that you can see for yourself another perspective or perception or interpretation of life. That's not just what we do in life, but who we get to be in life. And a lot of times it's from our identity. And usually it's an identity crisis, especially for men. I know women have it, but I'm not a woman. But I do know it's a human being flaw that we deal with. So women are included. However, for men, yes, that identity crisis. Whew, and when they happen are early in age. We teach it from 12 and up. The personal development courses that I take, they start at 8 years old. Now imagine you had this knowledge, these principles at 8 years old that you start to develop from. Because see, at 8 years old, you're really only dealing with maybe disconnection from your parents, maybe one parent by the time you're 8. I mean, you got an opinion about your parents by 8, but look, healing stuff from an 8-year-old perspective versus healing where I started at 40. 40, I started. Imagine there are children who are starting to heal at 8. They don't have that much stuff to deal with. Maybe school is boring and things like that. That's probably about it. Again, maybe a little disconnection from the parents or one parent or whatever that household dynamic is. See, because people think, oh, you got both parents in your house, that your life is better. Not necessarily. The whole conversation that we want to have about one parent, two parent households. Not always, it always doesn't mean it's better. You can have both parents in your house and still the child feels like they don't belong. Because the belonging is not connected to just having both parents. There's a natural break in communication between that child and that parent. Natural break in communication. Natural break. And we teach this. We have conversations about this because this is what it looks like. He went from being bullied to joining a political party who he felt like embraced him and accepted him. All while dealing with his emotional state, his experience of himself. And at some point in that clip, he shares that he realizes that, wait a minute, what am I dealing with? And so this next part here is being misled by the party he was accepted by and embracing. Now he started to feel like maybe this party that I'm a part of is actually not where I want to be. Maybe this might not be the right party for me. Now that I've realized that I've noticed something about myself and who I'm being, and now I'm projecting my bullying up against other people, but I'm still dealing with my own stuff. He had an awakening. Something triggered him to self-reflect and look at it from another perspective. He heard something. Sometimes it's just a conversation. Sometimes you gotta challenge your opinions. You gotta challenge your point of views. I had to get a whole nother ideology, philosophy, and theology at 40. So sometimes you got to find something outside of how you think about life and challenge those thoughts. The VA offers cognitive behavior classes. That was one of the best classes that I've taken so far. CBT. Because sometimes how we talk and how we think is so exaggerated because we have so much evidence that we think that that's just the way it is. In that self-discovery about the party he was in, it was triggered because of what happened on January 6th. He was shocked at how could these people go and storm the Capitol based off of what Trump was saying. Based off what Trump was saying. So my part about that for me, where I found my peace in this conversation, because there's so much about January 6th and what happened, right? My perspective, my understanding, my peace of mind is, yes, Trump, he said a lot of things leading up to that. He said a lot of things, but he spoke to the wounds of those people who believed in what he believed in. He spoke to the upset and the exclusion, emotional exclusion, or the emotional inclusion. And so they, from their fractures and their wounds and their unforeseen consequences and charged by what he had to say, they followed that and they did it. But again, it's not the activity of that. It's the conversation about that. That's what he spoke to. He spoke to the upsets and the frustrations of those people who believed in what he had to say about life and their life and the systems and the world systems. And it's funny because it's not really funny, but again, when I found my peace in this whole political conversation, I found my peace. And my peace is that even in 1981 with Ronald Reagan and Lee Atwater, when Ronald Reagan ran for that presidency and he went to the South and told the South to change parties, that he was the guy for them. Why are they in the party with those black people? The Democratic Party, when the Democratic Party was South, it was South. Then they changed over to become Republicans because Ronald Reagan had a conversation with him. So he spoke to them. How can the president say this? The government has your problem. I'm the president of the United States. I'm running for president, and I'm telling you that the government is the problem. I'm a part of that government system. One part of it. Like, that doesn't make sense. How can you say that the government is your problem and you're a part of that? You're a part of that system. So the South changed over from Democrats to Republican, but they didn't change their hearts. Maybe the upset is ingrained in their culture. Maybe the upsets are ingrained in their thoughts because of, again, what happened between the North and the South. Like, we can go all the way back to, was that history, right? We can go all the way back to history and discuss what it looked like. Because we know that in the South, there were Jim Crow laws. The South wanted control in the state. So you have all those, and that's ingrained. So those are the children's and children's of the children today, but the South is not Republican. But when Ronald Reagan did that, he unhyphenated all of the white-skinned people. The Irish, the Polish, the German, the Jewish. Look. They're not hyphenated anymore. There are no more Irish Americans and Polish Americans and Jewish Americans. They're just white. But doing that from an emotional standpoint, now I'm included by race because I'm white. I can check the white box, possibly. And the other side of that exclusion is African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, those of us who are still hyphenated. See, those were some emotional wounds back then. This is 1981. It's 2025. And we're still dealing with some of those emotional wounds, fractures of our character, of our behavior, is where it gets expressed out at. Now, that's empirical truth. Look at it. You ain't got to Google it. Look at it. Exclusion and exclusion is an emotional. That's what we teach it from. It's not what you do for me. It's an emotional charge. So he discovered, how could they storm the Capitol? And that's where he was like, wait a minute, this might not be the party for me. He challenged his thought process. How do I believe what people are saying? Especially when they're speaking from an upset and a frustration. And maybe some people are capitalizing off of your upsets and your frustrations. That's what he was pointing to. The next part of this is his challenge. He challenged his beliefs. He looked to see who was benefit from those upsets. He challenged his belief system, and he saw something for himself. What upsets, what frustrations do you have about life? But more so, what frustrations or upsets do you have about yourself first? The interpersonal relationship. See, we're so focused on looking at the interpersonal relationship between people that we forget that there's an interpersonal relationship on how I relate to myself about myself first. And if I'm not good enough, I'm not worth it, there's something wrong with me, I don't belong, and I got about 3 I'm not good enough, and I'm not worth it, and I'm not smart enough, and I'm not smart enough, I'm not tall enough, I'm not this. You don't think that all those play a factor in how you show up? You don't think that how you think about yourself shows up in life, in your behavior? You don't think that? Or do we think about it, but we don't know how to get out of it? We just think that's the way it is. I'm here to tell you that that's not just the way it is. Sometimes you gotta do the work. The freedom is on the other side of that. The freedom, you gotta go down that dark hole. You might have to go down that rabbit hole. You might have to go down there and see why you behave the way you behave. Where's it coming from? Could be an identity crisis. As veterans, we deal with that. 24 years in the Army, I didn't know who Farron was outside of that uniform, out of that rank. I didn't know who I was, so life was over. My identity was trapped in that rank. what has got you trapped in your identity. It could be a religious conversation. It could be a political conversation. It could be sports. You could be the athlete. You could be the soldier still in that identity. The doctors, nurses, careers. There's advocate. I'm an advocate for sickle cell trait. That's an identity. I'm on the radio. I'm on the air with you right now. That's an identity. I got to put this identity on to be in front of you right now. Did you hear me start this in the beginning of this episode? I was all over the place because I hadn't put that identity on yet. But, you know, sometimes somewhere between the first 5 minutes and 10 minutes, I'm relaxed. I'm still nervous when I start my shows because I'm humble. I don't have it all figured out. I learn how to deal with my identity. And the show goes the way it goes. But his experience of he was upset and frustrated. That was his experience when he discovered of what happened on June 6th. He started recognizing his upsets and his frustrations. And we tolerate a lot of stuff in life. We do. We tolerate a lot. And we watch it on TV and we turn it off and then we go back about our business. And we tolerate it until it comes to your front door. But sometimes the things in life that make you angry might be the things that changes you into that leader and take on that conversation because you're tired of hearing about it. I'm tired of hearing about this stuff. I'm tired. I was tired of hearing about sickle cell trait and people dying because they didn't know the risk factors of that gene. Yeah, I have that gene and I experienced that too. See, that was a personal experience. Me dealing with my mindset and the interpersonal relationship that I had to figure out for myself, that was me dealing with Farron, tired of Farron. Like I knew there had to be a better life. I was tired of Farron's old perception. I was tired of Farron's old interpretation of life. I was tired. And I was angry. I was angry because once I got some knowledge and I was like, man, that's how you've been acting? And then the anger went from being angry to being ridiculous because I now realized it wasn't just me. The whole world is dealing with these kind of things. So it wasn't independent to Farron. This is the whole world is dealing with life like this in our own version. So sometimes you got to take that. We got to stop tolerating stuff. We look at these things on TV, we turn it off, and then we go about our life and we tolerate it. He didn't want to tolerate it anymore. That's what I heard him say. So sometimes when you got to speak out about your vision, your purpose, your message, that thing that you're tolerating that makes you angry might be something that if you look in your life, you have a story to tell about that. Somebody needs to hear your story on why you feel like you're angry with that conversation because it needs to change or it needs to alter. I'm not trying to change the world. I'm just trying to alter your perception. The world is not my assignment. It's just those who care about these conversations or stuck in these conversations. You might see something, you might hear something for yourself. I'm not trying to change the world, but I'm trying to alter your perception. Sometimes you got to find an education, a mental health course, a personal development education, a biblical principle, a scripture in the Bible, whatever that is that changes, that softens your heart to look at life from another angle. And that's what this gentleman did. His heart was softened enough where he realized that maybe I don't want to be a part of this party. And it's not wrong. That's freedom. That's freedom to express yourself. And I'm speaking from that because I went through that process. I know what it feels like. I know what it tastes like to be stuck in an identity and think that life is over or this is just the way it is. And then to challenge those thoughts, to challenge those beliefs, to challenge the religion and realize that it's not even about religion. It's about a relationship with God. And everything else is an opinion about it. And sometimes our opinion gets in the way more than anything. People talk about, oh, I got haters, and they proud. They wear the haters badge like it's like, oh, I got haters out there hating on me. Your subconscious mind is your worst hater, not people around you. Your own subconscious mind is your biggest hater. Sometimes it ain't even about you. I thought it was all about Farron. It wasn't even about Farron. My parents did the best they could with what they had to have a child in the 70s. And they was children themselves. But I didn't see that as a child. See, I'm bringing this conversation not about the political piece of this. It goes back to the family. It goes back to the house. That young man was being bullied and it was overlooked. And it's not that his parents were wrong for not seeing it, but what was missing that they didn't see that their child was dealing with something at 14 years old, being bullied. Why was there not a connection, a relationship that he can come to his parents and say, hey, mom, dad, they're bullying me because of A, B, C, and D, and I can't take it. I feel anger and frustrated and hollow. Please, what can we do? No, who can we be? See, we always want to go to what can we do as an activity. Well, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Well, if I'm frustrated, whatever I do is going to be frustrated. But who are you going to be? You're going to be calm and patient or frustrated and upset and angry. And we don't realize, people, that we have a choice. And the last part of this conversation is, he says, why do they want to solve it? Why do they want to solve it? They don't want to solve it. No, of course they don't want to solve it. A lot of these things that we're dealing with is psychological. If they know what colors to put in Target to make you want to spend your money, do you not think that they know what these conversations are doing emotionally, psychologically? They know. They know. You know. But if you become cynical and resign about life and you collect all this negative evidence, then that's where you're going to be stuck with. Because it's not the decisions that you make. Sometimes it's the reason why you made the decision that you get stuck with. So you can't make another decision because you're disappointed in yourself because I be making mad decisions. No, maybe it's just the reasoning that you're using is not helping you. Maybe you're defending the reason why, not the decision, because it didn't turn out how you thought it was, or the expectation wasn't there, or I did this for them because I thought they would do this for me and they didn't. So now I'm disappointed in them, but I'm also mad at myself because why did I do that? Why I should have knew better. There's so many layers to this conversation that I can't even give it to you all in one take. I just pray that something that I said triggers you to soften your own heart, to look in your own life and be like, you know what, maybe I need to look at this from another perspective. Not from a black or white perspective, but from a human being flawed perspective. From a what if that looks like that? Then what does this look like for me? If that looks like that for them, what does that look like for me? So you have to search yourself. You ain't gotta do nothing but pay your taxes and die. You really ain't gotta do nothing. But you gotta be able to look in your own life. You might have to get free from your own past, from your own reasons and decisions, from your own past experiences, from your own perception. My mom never abandoned me. My dad did love me. As a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old, you better believe that was the truth. And I had proof. I had evidence that they didn't. I had evidence my mom abandoned me. I had evidence my dad didn't love me. And I collected it for 30-something years. Until one day, I was able to challenge those thoughts. I was able to challenge that perception. And when I got free from that past story, I got my life back. When I got free from my past story and stories, 10 of them, I got my life back. And then I realized, nah, it's my turn. I'm responsible for. I took responsibility for my life. I took responsibility for my behavior, for the broken relationships, for the friendships that were broken. I took responsibility for them. So yeah, sometimes we look in life and we want to blame other people. We want to blame the systems. It's not about blaming the system. As he ends his conversation, he says, hey, look, you know what? Trump is the president for the next 4 years. See what he offers in his campaign that fits you and go be about that. Until the next president runs. You see, we're looking for Trump to lower the gas prices, to lower the food prices, but we forget that God blesses us with the money to pay for the gas, to pay for the food. See, now we're going to go the last few minutes on this on the spiritual level. Because we can complain about the prices, but we don't give God the thanks to forgive me the money to pay for those high prices of food, to pay for those high prices of gas, because we still buying food and gas. But who do you thank outside of you for the money to pay for that expensive food? To pay for that expensive gas? See, that's where I got my freedom from worrying and concerns and circumstances. Because what the Bible says, to seek God first. And all that other stuff is going to be added. And you can go up against Maslow's hierarchy, and Maslow will tell you that the basic needs of human beings is food, water, sex, clothes, shelter. Yes, that's the basic needs of human beings in a survival state of mind. Yes. So yes, in my heart of a human being, in my soul, of course, I gotta survive this life. That's what the soul was there for. That's what your subconscious mind is there for, to make sure that you survive life. You don't want to die. That's the survival mode of being a human. But the spiritual part of you wants to live life and be free and share and give have charity and love and kindness. But that's the battle in the mind. That's why the Bible says you have to renew your heart. How do you renew your heart? Well, you got to figure that out. Sometimes it's just a conversation that could be had that's enough to soften your heart for another perception, for another interpretation to look from. Maybe sometimes that's all it takes. To not experience being judged because you have an opinion about something. We all got opinions about stuff. And some of my opinions ain't the truth. And my opinion might be a fact. But facts change. And how I view life may not be the way that you view life. And we grew up with our siblings in the same house, and everybody got a different view of mom and dad. Well, why is that? Because we all experience them differently. And none of it is a wrong experience. It's not me to tell you that your experience is wrong. I'm not saying that. But check and see if it's corrupted. Check and see if it's the truth. You might have to ask your parents and your grandparents what was going on back then, so you can get a sense of what to piece the story together from their perspective too, not just from yours. And so that young man's video that I played for you, it really spoke to me, because where I'm at today, January 1st, 2025, I got a lot of conversations. I care about a lot of things in life, but what it boils down to at the end of the day is that reconciliation and self-forgiveness. That's the spiritual context of it. And being a teenager, being a child, and understanding my story and where I've been through and how my heart was softened and how my perception changed about my parents, those are the two most important people in our life, is your parents. And if that's broken or a wedge or fractured, then how can you have a relationship with other people? How can you have a relationship with yourself when you're blaming your parents for what they didn't do for you? What you think they didn't do for you? So that's what I'm about this year. You're gonna hear me talk about my sickle cell trait talks, because that's my activity of life that I gotta contribute to, that God gave me. I'm a sickle cell trait carrier. People are dying from that inherited gene. Babies are being born still today with a disease that has no cure. And that's not wrong. But the emotional piece of that is there are parents who have had children with sickle cell disease that blame themselves, that wish they had known they were carriers and maybe not have had that child. There are families that had to have an abortion while the baby was in the womb because they didn't want to have a baby with a disease because they didn't know that they were carriers of an inherited gene that could cause a baby to be born with a disease that has no cure. See, there's an emotional piece to that. There's a mental health piece to that. It's not just, I'm not here to tell people to not have a baby or not. Only God knows. But if we're all born for a reason, you're born for a purpose. Even the political conversation could be something that you need to be involved in because you have something to say about that some people don't look from. And it could alter their freedom to choose a party best for them. Or accept the systems the way that they are and find your freedom in the system. I had to find my freedom in these systems. These world systems ain't gonna change. I was born into these systems. I got no control over these systems. But I have the control over how I think about it. So I'm not trying to teach you what to think, but you can definitely teach people how to think. But you got to be willing, though. And everybody's not willing. And so part of that conversation is important to me because, again, we're talking about our children, my daughters, my grandchildren. They're the next doctors and lawyers and presidents and whatever job that they take on. I don't want them worried about the stuff that I'm worried about today. They're going to have their own generational concerns. So sometimes, I'm going to end you with this. Sometimes, see, as parents, there's no manual, right? There's no manual. Okay, so we got to figure out relationships. There's no manual. But as a parent, I've learned that my concerns are not my daughter's concerns. And if I don't allow my daughters to tell me what their concerns are for their life, then I'm going to push my concerns on my daughters. And guess what that does? That creates rebellion and friction because I'm not listening to what they're worried about. See, that's their life. So imagine your parents behave the way they behave because they wanted your life to turn out. And they didn't have the skills to listen to you because they're trying to make sure that everything else is controlled and whatever they went through in their past, they don't want that to happen to you. So they're trying to help you avoid those stumbling blocks and those experiences because they know how negative they are. They know what could happen. But guess what? That might not be your concern. So then now there's the communication is broken because my concerns are not your concerns. So sometimes we have to look back at our own parents and be like, hey, mom, dad, what was you worried about? What was going on in your life? What was going on when you was born? Because then you can see the pattern. Well, no wonder y'all behaved like that because you was worried about this when you was then. So, well, no wonder. You see how that's freedom. Sometimes you got to have those hard talks and cry and push through that because there's freedom on the other side of it. And that's trench talk. It's either in my spiritual conversation and this trench talk conversation or my sports conversation or the whatever else talk show that I have, Beyond 2D. It's really all based on self-examination and self-awareness, self-love. Because if you don't discover that, your identity could be driven in some sports brand or some sports team. Do you know that people kill each other? They don't even own the team, and they kill each other at sporting events because you got on another jersey of an opposing team. That's the power of exclusion and inclusion. And don't think us as military veterans or military soldiers that we don't deal with that too. We're trained to objectify another human being to a terrorist and kill terrorists. But that terrorist is a human being first. Police, we have the same thing with the police. I'm a suspect first. I'm not Farron. I'm a suspect first. And we objectify one another. And then we talk to you based off those objectifications, those labels. And that, to me, is what's hurting us as a society. It's hurting us as a family. It's hurting us as individuals. Because I objectify myself. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not tall enough. I'm not big enough. There's something wrong with me. I don't belong, and I'm on my own. And that's how I live my life. And those aren't the truth. Even with the evidence that I collected, it wasn't the truth. It was just one perspective, one perception of myself, one interpretation of myself. So yeah, things are going to change this year on my broadcasting. I'm not here for the superficial talks. I'm not here for that no more. Suicide is a public health issue. My sickle cell trait is a public health issue. I have a lot of serious conversations. I'll go to the comedy club for my comedy, I guess. But for my talks, they're serious. People's lives are at stake. So again, if you want more information, please make sure you just go to farrond.com. That's my website there. If you want information about the curriculum that I'm talking about, LBI Solutions, you can definitely go there. Caldwell Williams is 90 years old. He is leaving me his curriculum. I've been training with him for the last 8 years so that we can move this conversation forward. It's 60 years old. That his education is 60 years old. 6 decades he's been teaching mindfulness, mental health education. Well, everything that I shared with you is some of that's part of his education. Some of it I learned from another education. Some of it I learned from the Bible. But LBI Solutions is the one that we've been demonstrating with veteran suicide. He's demonstrated with children and parents, corporations, the sense of belonging, the identity crisis. It gets in the way. All right, I'm out of here. Catch you on the next episode. Again, I appreciate your time. This is the Farron Dozier Show, aka Trench Talk. Catch me at Farron Dozier on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. If you want to be a guest, I'm gonna share the stage too, because it's not just my view. This is a world view. I want you to share your relatedness as well. Shouts out to MBR. Thank you for this opportunity to be on this platform, for giving veterans a voice. Believe me, this is just another way that us as veterans, we find that identity to stay connected to something until we figure out what's next. And you can figure out what's next. Shout out what's the count.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to Military Broadcast Radio. As we wrap up today's show, we want to remind you that the podcast of today's episode will be available right after we go off the air. So if you missed any part of the show or want to listen again, be sure to check it out. And remember, we're here to support and honor our veterans. Your stories and experiences matter, and we are committed to giving you a platform to share them. That's right. We're here to give our veterans a voice. So don't forget to catch the podcast and stay connected with us. Giving our veterans a voice.